Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Hey, it is so good to see this many people here. When you invite someone special to campus, you worry a little bit about how many people are going to come, and you don't want it to be a swing and a miss. So thank you so much for showing up. That was my one joke. I told Mickey I'm not funny at all, so that was the one that you get from me. So welcome so much. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Rebecca Hoy. I am the Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic and Student Affairs at Dakota State. I, several months ago, was at a conference. It was a conference on AI. And as I was attending sessions, I happened to go to a session on AI in baseball. And I'm not a particularly big baseball fan, but after I left that session, I could not stop thinking about what I learned. And I couldn't stop thinking about how much it applied to our students, our exercise science students, our AI students, our business students, across the board. This one presentation just was the complete package. So by chance, I reached out to the presenter and I said, would you ever consider coming to South Dakota and presenting? And I thought I may never see a response from him. And probably within 15 minutes, I got a response and it said, yes, I would love to do that. Sure, I would. It was amazing. It was incredible. And so I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest. And I'm going to read his bio because it's a good one and I don't want to make a mistake. So let me introduce you to Mickey Mentzer. Mickey Mentzer is the Senior Director of Baseball Systems for the Cincinnati Reds. In this role, his teams are tasked with managing the massive amounts of data for both the sport and business side of the organization. His teams are also responsible for the interfaces for the front office, coaching staff, sports science, and players. Before his role with the Reds, he had the opportunity to work in the innovation space for companies like P&G, Kroger, Anthem, and Fifth Third, it's a bank. He also architected a platform for the social app Uvu that supported 180 million users globally during its time. I am thrilled to have you meet Mickey Mentzer, and I know you are going to enjoy his presentation as much as I did. I can't wait to hear him speak again. Would you please welcome Mickey Mentzer?
Can you hear me? I hope so. Well, that's a big introduction. And like she said, I got invited to do this talk at Space Camp of all places in Huntsville, Alabama, which is really cool. And so when they reached out and said, hey, do you want to talk at Space Camp? I thought this would be a great opportunity. And I also kind of worried, like, are these people going to be sports fans? Are they going to care about what I say? Because they're doing rockets and NASA stuff, like so much cool stuff. So I gave this talk and it went well. And then a funny story about that night, I was in the hotel, I grabbed a burger, I was sitting in the bar, and a bunch of people from the conference were in the bar area of the hotel, and this guy came over and he said, hey, I just want to say I loved your talk. It's kind of a subject that people don't approach, but you made it very approachable and you made it understanding to a larger audience. And I was like, well, good, that's what I was hoping for. And so I was like, well, who are you? What do you do? I can't remember his name, but he's like, yeah, I'm the director of planetary science for NASA. And so in my head, I'm like, I'm glad I made it understanding for you, like probably one of the smartest people on the planet. So let me tell you about who I am. I'm a baseball fan, I'm a dad, I'm a husband. Those are my two kids. This picture is a little older. This was taken at our spring training facility in Arizona. And like in the introduction, these are some of the companies I did work for. Luckily, I figured out early in my career that I was driven by working on cool things. And so my goal in my career was to chase the next cool thing. Let's do things for companies that they're not doing well or something new. And I've, job hopped, gone to different areas just because I wanted to build the next great thing. And I got close with Uvu. I don't know if anyone's familiar. At one point, we were Skype's biggest competitor, which is now Teams, but we were a video connection platform so people could chat and talk online. And we had the idea, as a pretty small company, we had the idea at the time, we have this huge user base. What does the future of connecting people look like? And so we thought, at that time, we had a theory that in the future, people are going to want to take small video clips and put them online and then respond to those with other video clips. And we called it Uvu Chains. And if you Google it and look up our launch video, we built TikTok before TikTok. The users didn't respond great to it. And the billionaire funder of our company didn't like us dropping some users. And so they pulled the funding. 7 months later, TikTok took over the world. And I was sad because I had a pretty big stake in that. But it led me to some other things. One of those was the Cincinnati Reds. And I got this job a little bit different than most people break into sports. A lot of people, that's their goal. I'm going to work in sports. I'm going to take an internship. I'm going to get paid pennies. I'm going to, restock snacks. I'll do whatever it takes to work my way up. I got my job at a happy hour. I was talking to some people in the Reds, and I said, you guys should do this. I'm a fan. Like at other companies, we've done things like this, innovation. And they said, you should do that for us. And, there's a few more conversations in between, but I landed a job there. It was pretty cool. But we're not just the Cincinnati Reds. We have all of our affiliates, too. And so our AAA team, our AA, low A, high A, we have an Arizona Complex League, which is a lot of the rookies and young kids that just come into baseball. And then we have 2 teams in the Dominican Republic. We have facilities at all these places. We're in charge of all that. A lot of the work that we do starts at the major league level and trickles down because ultimately our goal is to have the Reds win the World Series. They don't do it often enough, but they did it in the past, and we want to get back there as soon as possible. Our team is pretty big when you look at baseball. When I got there, there was probably 8 of us, and now there's 30-something. We have, I've been blessed with budget and headcount, and so that's a really cool thing to grow that. And so we have people all over the spectrum of IT. We have DevOps, people that are putting our things out there in front of users. We have developers, we have data scientists, we have data engineers, analysts on both the baseball and business side. And so it's growing and it's super cool. But when we talk about, I'll get to AI, I promise. When we talk about what goes into it, it's data. Like baseball has been really good about collecting data from the beginning. If you look at old baseball cards, there's data points on the back of it. So someone's tracking that, putting the stats in there, but it's changed over time. And so when we talk about the evolution of data in baseball, how much data are we generating? In the beginning, we were generating, basically what you see on a card. What happened on the play? How many times out of 100 is this guy getting a hit? And those are how we're measuring players. And I put a little timeline on there, but we start, getting more in depth, like the play-by-play level, into the pitch-by-pitch. Now we're into advanced metrics, like how the ball's spinning, and the biomechanics of a guy swinging a bat or throwing a ball. All of that's tracked. And so we've gone from baseball cards that look like the one on the top to the one that looks like on the bottom, with a bunch of made-up stats. It looks like ex-WOBA, things like that people are looking at that truly do mean something, but the average fan may not know. And we've gone from about 100 bytes that we get to a game to 7 terabytes to every major league game. And for those of you in the data world, our retention policy is forever. They won't let me delete anything. And so I'm paying for that to store somewhere. That's not a fun part of the job. Budget time's always rough, but it's an insane amount of data that we're collecting. I threw this in here today because I forgot I had this picture, but this is wonderful. I don't know if you can read it, but if someone reached out in 1990, right after the Reds won the World Series, and said they wanted to be a statistician for the Cincinnati Reds, and this was the response, that there's no professional baseball team that has statisticians on staff. Maybe look at one of these, stat companies, which I thought is hilarious, right? Because if you think about where we're at now, from there, it's funny. This guy was either insane or ahead of his time, but it's pretty cool that he sent that letter. But how do we collect the data that we're doing? I'll start with in-game. In-game, our players are not allowed to wear any devices on the field. And so everything we track has to be from some system outside of the action on the field. The majority of what we collect is from video, and we have a bunch of different cameras. This isn't our setup, but up there on the left, you're seeing a field with a bunch of different cameras capturing things. We have way more than that. If you only had that, you wouldn't be very successful. But one of the cameras in the middle, it's an Edgetronic, and those can capture, I don't know what ours are, but I think it goes up to 18,000 frames a second. So you get that level of detail from these cameras, and you can imagine storing that. And then you have TrackMan and Hawkeye, radar-based systems that are tracking what's on the field, when a ball's in play, players moving around. There's just a bunch of different systems that I pull in all that data every night after the game and try to make sense of it. Those pictures are from one of our tech cages in Goodyear, Arizona at our spring training complex. So we talk about how much data. These aren't even our big data sources, but I did, and this is landed, this is cleansed, ready to go, ready for the analysts to do things. These are the row counts of certain data sources in one of our SQL databases. And we're looking at 98 million for StatCast pitch, which is really just every pitch that we've tracked in the system. The TrackMan Hawkeye, this is all pitching, by the way. This doesn't take into account hitting or any in the game, in the field, throws, runs, any of that. We track sprint speed. If it happens in our ballpark, we track it. Pre-game, post-game. I can tell you how fast the guys got to the player to throw the Gatorade on his head after the game. I don't know that we're going to leverage that for anything, but we know who's really good at that and who's not. We actually did something once where we tracked how well the reporter that knows it's coming and has to keep a straight face before he jumps out of the way, how well he reacts to that and his pop time like a catcher. I thought that was a pretty cool project. But it's just an insane amount of data that we're collecting. Here's my first peek into AI. That's not a real baseball player. I generated that image with AI. I'm not good with that side of AI, like the image generation, but I was like, hey, that works, and it's on brand for this talk. But the challenges we have is that all the information that we're bringing in needs to be ready as soon as possible. We're different than other sports. Football, you have 17 games that you're tracking. You have a week between games. I have 162 games in my season, not counting spring training games. A relief pitcher that throws today could throw tomorrow. So if I have insights from what he's done today, if he doesn't have that before his game tomorrow, really that night, I've lost any positive reinforcement or learning ability from that information to get him. So our goal is to have post-game hitting reports and pitching reports in the player's hand by the time they're out of the shower, before they leave the ballpark. And so they have a player's app that gives them that information. But I have to pull that data down, run the analysis, get all the models to run, and get it in their hands by that time frame. Most companies don't have that quick of turnaround. We talk about Kroger, the grocery store. They're not analyzing data that fast to make sure the next bag of Cracker Jacks is ready for the consumer. And the volume we talked about, and then the accuracy, right? I get questioned more on data accuracy than anything else we do, I think. There could be a pitch that makes it through into our landed data that says the spin rate was too high or the break was too much, and someone will see that and catch it. There are brilliant people looking at this data, and so it has to be right. And so by the time those reports are running, that data has to be right. All that has to happen quickly, and so we don't have humans looking at every line that comes in or every data source. That's where we leverage AI to help us make those decisions, and we've built out some decision trees and how data should fall in the flow. But all that exists because of the power that a machine can do it for us and do it pretty well. Same with, this is the same type of slide, just breaking down ingestion, what are we doing with AI, validation, what are we doing, staging, reporting, all of these things we can use an AI touch to get more speed in the process and accuracy in what we're looking at. I can run through a model and I can throw out the bad data, like a curveball shouldn't move this much, or a fastball is not going to go 200 miles an hour. And so if those data points come in, we can easily flag those, get those out without a human in the loop. That's pretty nice. All right, so let's talk about our players. How can we leverage this data, AI, whatever the marriage is between those two, to get the most baseball we can out of the people in our system? That's kind of the goal of us. Draft, trade good players, get all the baseball we can out of them, and then go to the next player. So we can do biomechanical analysis. We use a tool called Kinetrax, which is a camera-based markerless biomechanics system, and I'll show some stuff about that in a second. But we're getting full biomechanics from the action on the field. What's cool about baseball and sets itself up well for that compared to other sports is we have these specific points where these things are taking place. We have a batter's box, we have a pitcher's mound. And so I have 8 cameras on the pitcher's mound, I have 6 on the plate, so I'm getting pretty accurate analysis of this guy did this in this zone. when I think about what they're doing in football, it's wild because you have 11 guys on each side just running wild, or soccer. It's unpredictable. There's a finite amount of things that can happen in baseball. A guy's throwing a ball that you're trying to hit. Like, we're kind of limited in what the outcomes could be. And so building models around where things are supposed to happen is easier for us than other sports. We talk about injury prevention. I met with different groups throughout the day, and every time injury prediction came up, and I don't know anyone in our org that will buy into a model or anything that says we can predict injury. We're not machines, we're not cars. You hear a weird sound in your car engine and this light comes on, your timing belt's gonna break. Like, you could probably predict that based on this has happened in my Honda Accord a million times. Humans are different. I don't know what you're eating, how you're sleeping. I don't know how you've trained. I don't know your muscle tissue. There's so much that can go into it. Some guy could throw a curveball 80 times and never have an injury. Another guy could throw it 3 times and end up with Tommy John surgery. So I don't believe in injury prediction, but injury prevention is real. And so we track, like, what is your normal movement? What can we expect? What are the outcomes we have when we're looking at your performance? And where are the deviations? So, the old school baseball diehards say, back in my day, pitchers would throw until their arm fell off. They'd throw 2 complete games in a row. And now we're pulling pitchers sometimes with 60 pitches, sometimes 80 pitches, and not going the full game. Because what we're seeing is we can pinpoint the exact moment they're fatigued. Now, I can't radio that down and say, he's tired, get him out of there. But we know what to look for, and we train our coordinators and the people in the dugout to look for that. And so we'll make changes as a guy gets fatigued. Because when a pitcher gets tired, there's really only a few positive, outcomes. There's really no positive outcomes that can happen unless he gets lucky and he's still able to land some pitches. But he's either going to get hit or potentially hurt. And so we want to avoid both of those things. So we use technology, to find where does Andrew Abbott show fatigue. Last night he pitched 8 innings. It was great. He didn't show fatigue. We won the game. Little plug for the Reds there. So let's focus on hitting, and this is where we start to get in to see some of the data that we're getting in real time, and some of these visualizations come from StatCast. If you watch it, we have a pretty cool machine I'll show in a second on the hitting and pitching side, where we use some AI to mimic what you may see in a game. But what we're trying to get at is what we see on there, where we can evaluate the play not just on what you see, but on the data behind it. Did we take the correct approach in this specific example? This is one of our hitters. He's pretty famous. His name's Ellie De La Cruz. He can hit the ball a lot. So in this graphic is a hit he had against Pittsburgh where he hit the ball pretty far. That white line is the outfield. And so what does it look like when we're looking at that from the biomechanics side and the data side?
Leads baseball.
So this is the play.
Strikeouts. And has hit a lot of home runs. There's another. 25th for De La Cruz, and the Reds lead by half dozen.
So if only he could do that every time. But this is some of the inputs we're getting. So the corners are not. The bottom left corner just kind of shows what a skeletal analysis would look like from a player after we get that. But the other ones are of him. And so if you look at the top right and left, those are different angles of the same swing where we've got the markerless biomechanics software starting to map his joints. And what that looks like when you watch those videos independently is this. It's mapped the plate. When the ball comes in, it'll be marked. But you're seeing everything involved with this swing from his toes, all the way to the top of his head. We're kind of mapping the points. And when you get 6 views of that, you're getting a pretty accurate description of what happened during this play. I have another one. Same swing, different angle. It's fun to watch when they hit it well. And this is from those really, really high frame rate cameras. So then what that does is we can put that into our software, look at the angles at the bottom, and come up with a full model at the top. And in a second, you'll see that model at the top is rotatable. I can go look at them from underneath, the top, any angle to start to get, a visualization of what was good in this case or what was bad in another case. We also have the raw data from that, and there's a ton of reports we run from it. But all this is, being captured from AI, mapping the joints in a video. This is an interesting graphic. This is not the same swing, while Ellie is a switch hitter, this is not him. But what it shows you is an optimal bat, or an optimal hit and a non-optimal hit. And so on the white skeleton, you're seeing everything's done right, and the result is a 410-foot home run. And on the red, you can see the bat path changes. He dips his hip a little bit. There's a bad exit velocity is pretty good, but the launch angle is pretty bad, and it's an out. And it just shows you these small things that we can tweak in the same swing, same pitch to get a good outcome versus a bad outcome. Same in pitching. I'm going to run through the pitching. It's very similar. We're tracking all the same things, but just the guy who's throwing the ball. This is the look at that machine that we have. And so this machine is pretty new. Not all ball clubs have it. They're insanely expensive to get installed. But what this does is it moves on an axis. That hole in the middle will rotate. And so you can load up any picture that you put in there. That you have video available of. It'll put the actual video of the pitcher. You can outline, or put in the background, you can put your ballpark. So from a hitter's perspective, it looks like what he's going to face on the mound. And this will mimic the exact pitch that you're going to see. And so if the fastball rotates this much and it breaks this much, you're going to see that from that pitcher. And so the hitters are able to take live batting practice off of what they're going to face in the game. It's pretty neat. This is what it looks like underneath our stadium. It looks like a guy throwing the ball. There's still some complaints that at its core it's still 2D, but this gets you as close as you can to a pitcher you're going to face before you do. In our opening series, we played the Giants. At the time, they had a pitcher who's no longer with them. He got traded, Rogers, he's a sidearm pitcher, and he throws his release point so low, his knuckles almost hit the ground when he throws. The first thing I did is, I'm putting him on this machine. But this one's limited to 3 feet off the ground. I couldn't do it. So we can't do that pitcher, but I thought it was cool. At the end of this video, you see the woman sitting there. It's almost like a video game. She's dialing up what to see. And so as a hitter faces it, she can say, I want a slider to hit this area in the zone, and it'll nail it every time. And so you can mimic what a guy did. One cool use case of this is we have a pitcher, Nick Martinez, in spring training, who was watching himself pitch to himself, and he's standing with a bat, seeing what his pitches look like as a batter, and trying to find out areas he can improve in his delivery or when he's facing a live hitter. It's super cool. That's a fun toy. Same thing, Brett Lauder.
He just shoots off the backside of him. Right there.
Good pitch. Strikeouts are great. Same views, getting the biomechanics. And then we can come up with reporting, like we can talk about elbow flexion or hip, or are you landing the right way? And so we come up with these reports. This is not one of our reports, but ours are similar. But you can see green is probably what you're doing right. Red is what you need to improve on. And it gives the opportunity for a biomechanist or a coordinator to work with the player on what he can do in a game situation to stay consistent. The one thing that we use this for in pitching a lot is you want every pitch that a guy throws to look like it could be a fastball, it could be a curveball. You don't want to give the hitter any indication of what you're throwing. And so what that looks like from a skeleton is one of these pitches is almost 92 miles an hour and the other one's almost 84. But if you could watch this 100 times, it's a 50-50 chance on if you get it right which one is which. But it's just cool to see in motion, even at the release point and the wrist. Everything looks the same, but they're 10 miles an hour different in these pitches. Talked about injury prevention. This is a sample report of what it looks like when we're looking at guys get fatigued, what they need to do when they're dropping their shoulder, their release of their pitch changes. These are the things that we get in front of the players so that they know to tell a coach I'm fatigued, or we know what to see as a coordinator in the dugout. Pitch design is another thing. This is something that machine does so well. This is a pretty basic example of how pitches move, how you hold the ball, how you snap your wrist in order to throw those pitches. The machine does that, but the more a ball moves out of the zone, the harder it is for someone to hit. This is a cool fact, not AI, but at a major league level, a fastball coming in at 95 miles per hour gets to the plate faster than a blink. And so the last 25 feet of a pitch goes so fast that your brain doesn't have time to process what it's seeing. So you've made the decision on whether you're going to swing or not before the ball even gets to you. And some of the best break you're going to see from a pitcher is at the end. And so seeing these things in slow motion, knowing that a ball can do that, and knowing that hitters still sometimes hit the ball is incredible to me. I couldn't hit. That's why I never got farther than high school. But guys can do it, and it's incredible to see. This is AI in action in the ballpark. So this is one of those high frame rate cameras. This is live in game. This is not one of our pitchers. This is a guy that throws a pretty good pitch. And I'm able to zoom in and see in real time how he's holding the ball and how the spin comes out. There's a couple uses for this. One, we can look for ways we could potentially improve a guy that we have throwing this pitch. We can look for efficiency, like, oh, you hold your splitter different than he throws his splitter, even though everything else is the same. This is why maybe he's getting a little more action out of it. We could also look for different things the pitcher may be doing where we know potentially what's coming, but it's just cool that in a game I can get views like this. I have two different ones. This is another picture, but it's pretty detailed view. I challenge you the next time you see baseball on TV to look at the pitcher and see if you can even see if he's holding a ball before he throws it. It's pretty cool how they hide it. So then we talk about pitch tipping, and this is something we heavily relied on AI to analyze the data on. It can do computer vision, it can do the biomechanics, but what we're seeing live in game of when this pitcher, and this is a pitcher that went into the postseason and got shelled, and afterwards everyone came up with the reason why was because when he was throwing fastballs, his glove was higher when he was setting up than when he was throwing non-fastballs. And if you tell a major league hitter that a fastball is coming, he's going to tee off on that. And so that's what happened, and it was really cool seeing. That one may still be tough for a hitter to see, but when you look at this one, when a guy throws a sinker versus a curveball, look how high his glove angle is as he's adjusting his grip before he throws. If you know what's coming, you can either know, hey, I'm not swinging at this, or hey, let's put this in the river. And so we use this a lot. We can expand on that. There's other uses. When you think about pitch tipping, you're like, the pitcher's going to tell us what they're throwing. What we're finding, and don't tell anyone, I don't think anyone, I'm sure every team is doing similar things. You can look at other things happening in the game, like perhaps the catcher sets up differently when he's expecting, a breaking ball versus a fastball. Or potentially, I won't say for sure not, you could watch what a third base coach is doing when a fast, like certain pitches coming versus others, if a guy's lined up a little closer to the bag, maybe closer, he's not as worried about a ball coming his way. There are tells like that we're looking for on anything, any advantage we can find in game. It's impossible for us to watch every game, every pitch, every action, but with AI we can, flag things that we want to see and pull those video clips out or just get the data from it. And so we're doing a ton in that space. Game strategy, baseball for dummies. We don't have this book, but sometimes I feel like we need it. We just help coaches, coordinators, players make more informed decisions. We do pitch prediction. One nice thing about having as many games as we have is that there's a ton of data to tell us what tendencies are, because over 162 games, I'm going to know what this pitcher likes to throw, or how this batter's approach to the plate is. If you watch baseball and you see in between each batter, the player pulls a card out of his hat or his back pocket and looks at that comes from our team, and it's says this is the hitter's tendencies, this is where you should line up. I have an example of that here. So there's a player looking at the card. Jesse Winker was a good player for us. He's bounced around the league. It's a quote about how he loves what we've given him. And on the right is a sample card. It's not ours, but it's a sample card. On the top is typically what you'll see on one side of it. And those letters are all just positions on the field. And so it says, in this scenario against this hitter, this is where you should be. It's kind of changed a little bit with PitchCom. So PitchCom, catchers used to just throw the signs between their legs and the pitcher would know what to throw. PitchCom's changed. There's a few players on the field that have a speaker in their hat, and the catcher will type in on a little gamepad on his leg, this is the pitch I expect you to throw. I want you to throw a slider away. And so there's a few players on the field that know what pitch is coming. If you know you're going to throw away to a certain hitter, they're based on what they're going to be able to do when they swing, you could shift right, know where you need to be in position like that. So it's changed a little bit with that, but we still put these cards out and players find them useful. This one's pretty new for us. We're taking into account every bit of data we have on a play to help give our third base coach the best information on whether this specific player should run. So let's say that Ellie De La Cruz, he's pretty fast. He claims he's the fastest man in the world. He's not, but he's pretty fast. He's on first, and there's a hit to the right field. We run through the scenarios and say the probability that he'll get to second on a tag up is here. The probability he gets to third, it comes even more into play when the ball hits the ground. And so we take into account this is the strength of this right fielder's arm. Should Ellie go for this play? In the moment, we hope that some of that sticks because it's a split decision that the coach has to make on whether to send him or not. But we want to give all the tools we have, and this is a fun thing to play around with. And you see, like StatCast does some of it on the sprint speed, but we take it so much farther than they do. We look at every possible outcome. Can the fielder get in position fast enough to make a play? We look at if it's a stolen base, we look at the catcher pop time, their arm strength, the speed of our players. Last year we wreaked havoc on the base paths. We haven't done it as much this year. We have a new coach, different philosophy, but that's a fun part of the game, and there's a ton of data that goes into whether we'll be successful around that. Again, we cannot harness all that without some magic tools that help us, and we use AI in a bunch of those areas. Advanced scouting, same. This is what it used to look like when you would scout a team. Now it looks like this with heat maps and all the fancy graphs. Come up with all those models after each game. This is another AI-generated image. That scout looks way too happy. But we use AI. I had a question earlier about scouting reports. I think I have it on the next slide. Yeah, so a typical, this is not ours, but they're all very similar. They're on the 80-20 schedule, 80-20 grading scale. There's a ton of text in here, right? And so a lot of the output we have from when players are scouted are what's the average of these numbers. We read through this, but for each draft we'll scout 3,000 players that we're looking to potentially draft. And so I had a theory that there's a lot of value that we're not getting in this text, and so we're using large language models to go through this type of text to come up with bullet points like we flag things as power, or we flag things as potential injury, and we put those on the players, and then we can dig in and see the actual pieces of information the scout wrote. But it's really cool that we're starting to get a ton more value out of all these things that are typed up by the scouts. The other thing we're using it for is we're grading the scouts. Just like your teachers, your professors, there's some easy graders, there's some hard graders. And so we want to find out, does this scout see power when there's no power? Does this scout see talent when there's no talent? And get those grades on the players and go back and say, you're not a very good scout, you should find another career. So yeah, I just feel like a ton of the information we're getting from this, and that's pretty new. That's in the last 2 years, so that's been a really fun project to work on. I talked a little bit earlier about the automatic balls and strikes. This is something that there's AI going into. Where was this pitch? Where was location? Tennis has been doing it for a while, the challenge system. We're now doing it in the minor leagues. I think there's a pretty good chance you're going to see it in the major leagues. It's not tracking. It's not every pitch is overridable. There's a certain amount of challenges. I like the system they have. I think saving it for big moments is cool. Umpires really are not as bad as fans like to make them seem. I think I said this earlier, the worst thing for umpires is when TV broadcasts put that box on the screen, because then everyone became an expert, and it's so easy to see when the little white dot stays up there after the pitch. But if umpires are consistent, if they consistently call a zone, players learn to adjust to that. But there are times where they miss blatantly, and so if you had a challenge in your pocket, you tap your helmet, the umps look up, it's pretty instant. It comes from offsite, it comes from Major League Baseball. We'll go on the screen and it'll show, yep, it was a strike, or no, it was a ball. We'll see more of that. The Major League's players did use it in spring training. It's been going through the minor leagues. It's pretty positive feedback from it. Let's go on the business side. There's a whole other side of the sport that we haven't talked about. The business side, as you can tell, the majority of my time is focused on baseball. That's our end goal, is to win every game and win the World Series. But we do want to sell tickets. We do want to make money. We do want to have fans in the seats. One of the challenges that we have, and I think right now it's a fool's errand for so many variables that we can't account for, is small market teams that don't have big season ticket sales like us. We need to sell single game tickets to hit some revenue goals. And so the business wants to know how many tickets are we selling for 2 Tuesdays from now game, and so what are our predictions? And they want it to be perfect. So we have to account for weather, we have to account for who we're playing, all the different variables that go into there. The number one predictor on if we sell tickets, does anyone have a guess? I said it earlier, so if you heard it earlier, but what do you think the number one predictor of a team selling tickets is? Who said it? I heard it. Winning. Yes. If you win games and you're in the hunt, people are going to come. It's weird how that works. But this shows some of the raw data, some of the predictions. We run predictions. We try to get close. Sometimes we are, sometimes we're not. But we're not as accurate as the business wants us to be. There are some things they do off that. How many vendors should we schedule? Are there certain areas of the stadium we should not have this hot dog stand open? They do that. But it's tough. We do giveaways, we do concerts. We had Snoop Dogg play after a game. One game this year was a sellout. That was easy to predict. Others are not. When was this? June. We're playing Arizona. There were storms before and during the game, and we sold 1,200 tickets. That's pretty ridiculous. And we were still only off by 764 tickets in a stadium that seats 42,000. That's pretty accurate. But when you look at that number compared to the total tickets sold, it's off. But yeah, I hate this. And it still happens, and we're still reiterating on it. But we use, a lot of AI to help predict that. And then fan engagement is a big one. Everything you see on the screen is generated instantly. They're using AI. We have go-ahead entry where we're doing facial recognition when you enter the ballpark. So if you opt into that and you bought 6 tickets, you walk up, it sees your face, it'll say your name, oh, hi, fan, and it'll know you have 5 other people with you, and so you can go through, and it makes lines so much quicker. I like that. Not many people use it. People are still afraid to use their face for things, which I think is hilarious because you're on camera everywhere you go. If you have a driver's license, all these things already have your picture, so I just use it so I don't have to take out my phone or any of that. And then this fan cam is pretty new. A lot of ballparks are using it. It's pretty neat though. So they are taking an image of the stadium the whole game. And so say when Ellie De La Cruz first came up, his second or third week, he hit for the cycle, and it was the ballpark was full. Place went nuts. You can go to that game in fan cam, find yourself in there, and you can zoom in, like in this picture, to pretty clear pictures of anywhere in the stadium. And they're adding some features. They're putting some AI in where they can track you around the ballpark, so you can, say what was my journey at this ballpark and see what you did during that game. And it'll flag key moments in the game, and you can see your reaction. Were you paying attention when that home run was hit, or were you eating nachos? Those are always cool. I wish they had it when I was younger. I had my 2 kids. We were sitting in the first row of the outfield, and a home run got hit right to me, and I barehanded, I caught it, right? It was a great thing. And I looked down at my kids, and neither one had an idea that a ball was even near us. All the fans around us were, so I wanted to be the cool dad, and I wasn't. But it was neat. I wish we had the fan cam from that. And then what's the future? Moving forward with AI, are we going to create more virtual environments where we can prepare players for that? Are we going to have more wearable devices when we do practice? Are they going to get small enough and non-intrusive enough that we can have them in game? Soccer players wear things in game because it doesn't affect the game. I think we're close. There's a device that you can put on your bat. It has a little rubber thing on the end that'll track, certain characteristics of the bat. For some time, our superstar Ellie De La Cruz liked the way that felt, and so he took the device out and left the rubber grip on the end of the bat. It was pretty funny. I think it was against San Francisco. I don't remember who. Maybe the Nationals. I don't remember who it was against. But he had 2 home runs that game, and they were complaining about it. And they went out to the umps, and the umps said, "No, we checked before. It's legal." And so on his second home run, when he hit it, he turned to their dugout and pointed at it, just to throw some fuel on the fire. But it was cool. So maybe we'll get to a point where we're able to track, more in the game with those things. That's it. I flew through it. You guys all came here to spend time. I hope there's questions. If not, I'll ask myself questions. But I want to, make sure I cover anything there is about baseball, about our team. If you ask me who we're going to get in the off season, I can't tell you, but I may give you hints. I don't know. Fire away. You're close. You want to do yours? Go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to ask kind of a cliche question, but just with all like baseball being kind of an old school sport and all this new influx of data, like if you could take all this like predictive stats and things like that back to like the Big Red Machine days in the 70s, what do you think like Joe Morgan and them would say about all this? Do you think it would like blow their minds, or do you think they'd be into it? Or
I think if you approach them at the right time in their career, they'd be into it. They're the old school group. They think it's dumb. They hate analytics, right? Like we just retired an announcer who's a Hall of Fame announcer. He hates the analytical side of this. But I think that's just like the curmudgeon in them coming out. The Big Red Machine, it would have been amazing if they had. I mean, they were arguably the best baseball team ever. People have made that argument. I think in a career, you want every bit of information you can have to become a better player, lengthen your career. So I think they'd be for it. I hope so. But no, they don't like it now. I think they have mics.
Alrighty. So whenever you watch baseball, there's always crazy stats that they're showing on, and we always laugh. We're like, why is that? That's a goofy
Are you going to
stat.
quiz me?
Huh?
Are you going to quiz me on some?
Well, no, it's kind of a two-parter. Do you have a favorite data point that like you and your team, you're like, this is our favorite thing to analyze? And then the other part is like, do you have a favorite aha moment from you or your team where you're like, oh my gosh, look at this stat, look at this data, this is going to be a game changer?
That's a good question. So I think our most powerful stats are our internal stats. We have some that we use internally, and it's not that there's some secret sauce in them. It's that when we have this much information and our GM is trying to make a decision on a player, if I throw 70 stats at him, or I throw this, if there's advanced analytics in front of him, it may be lost. And so we take that and we jumble it up into like a grade. Like, how does this player grade against this player? And so we have some internal ones. A DEFCON one where we judge defense, like your defensive ability, which is very powerful. So those are probably some of my favorites. The aha moment, that's a tough one. I mean, there are moments where you're like, when you go on a limb and it works, it's great. Like, this is a very competitive industry, and you see front offices have full turnover quite frequently, right? And so there's 1,000 people that want my job, and so you want more wins than losses. I don't know if this is necessarily stat or AI related, but in this trade deadline, the Reds are kind of in a period where our window's open. We're trying to make a run at the postseason, and we have budget constraints, but then we also need to get better. And so we signed a third baseman, or we traded for a third baseman from the Pirates that at the time people were like, he can't hit, right? But he's by far the best defender in baseball. He's the gold standard at third base. And I told my wife, I told her after the trade was announced, but really we talked about it before. I said, this guy's going to be a fan favorite, and since he's going to change what happens on third base, and to see that come to fruition was incredible. Like, that was one of the coolest moments that I've had there.
You mentioned that due to like the frequency of games in a season, that you try to make the data turnover like as fast as possible, basically.
Yeah.
How like frequent is it for those statistics to actually have like a noticeable impact on the next game that quickly?
So I wish you could ask that question to some people that I say, why do we run this every night? Like, what really changes at this point? But it does when you're looking at like a starting pitcher that's only pitching once every 5 days. At the beginning of the season, it's pretty significant. Or if you're trying something new, they do change enough, right? And tendencies change throughout the season. Players get better, players get worse. They tend to favor different things. And so you want to be up to date with that. So it changes a lot. Do I need to run these models? Do I need to pay what I'm paying every day? Probably not, but I've lost that battle a bunch of times.
Question is about innovation and creativity. So you were talking about how stats evolved. You used to be batting average was everything,
Yeah.
and then it was on base percentage or OPS, or then who or what group decides, let's analyze something different that has never been analyzed before? Now, obviously, the introduction of StatCast was because it was just pouring all this data at you, but My guess is if you spoke here a year from now, you'd have even more ways to analyze. How do you come up with new ways to analyze something when it already appears as though you've fully covered it?
There are, and I'll just tell you, in our ecosystem, our team, there are people sitting around trying to think of the next edge or the more efficient way to measure something or the more way to get insight from something. And that's just our team. And then you have 30 other clubs doing it. And then you have all the fringe baseball, the drive lines, like companies like that are doing things. And then now a huge driver is the sports betting industry, right, that are putting values on games and players. They have, their statistical analysis and they're coming up with it. So, yeah, like if we can, batting average doesn't tell you much, right? It tells you kind of a story of what this guy's done, but you don't get the insight. Like, are they well hit balls that just found a player, or is this player a terrible hitter, but man, he gets lucky, it spins through the infield, who knows? And so we want to judge and then normalize across ballparks, because if you played every game in our ballpark versus an outfield that's huge, you're going to have different stats. Judge, I've seen a ton of pick on the Yankees. I've seen a ton of information where Judge wouldn't have the home runs he had if he played, someone else's schedule. And so normalizing those things across ballparks is huge. So it's just people thinking of things, and they're paid to do that. It's pretty wild.
Yes, so that kind of bled into a question I was going to ask. Great American Ballpark can be quite a launching pad sometimes. Mm-hmm. And just curious how weather data sometimes maybe could be integrated into the AI analysis, mm-hmm. and maybe on a managerial side, whether you go for a bunt in a situation based on certain weather conditions, or you try to get the big inning and things like that, if that's something that you utilize.
Absolutely. You wore the right hat, by the way. I just want to let you know. I'll start with a funny story. So we always, the Cincinnati Reds are famous for opening day. It's a huge event, and then that next Saturday we do kids opening day, and the players do a little parade, and they get to meet fans. We were there, and I was with my daughter, and we were in the clubhouse, and we were going up the elevator, and we were in there with some players and one of the coaches, and it was a pretty windy day. And so one of them said something about the wind. I was like, yeah, it's pretty windy. Not thinking, I said, hopefully it's blowing out. And both of them were pitchers, and they're like, we hope it's not, and I'm like, I said the wrong thing. But no, we do get that. We have weather service data pretty accurate for our ballpark. So at every point of contact, really any time in the game, but like we measure at the point of contact or pitch release, I can tell you what the barometric pressure is, what the humidity in the air is, which way the wind's blowing. We measure all that. Some of that's the coach's gut, like you say, like, man, the wind's blowing out. Let's put our hitters in a position to get the ball, get some air under it. But yeah, we do have all that. And we have data sources. Someone asked this in an earlier talk today. We capture everything. And I think baseball is kind of leads sports in that area. There's a lot of it we aren't using efficiently or even using yet, but we have it. And like, we'll have it forever because I'm not allowed to delete anything. And so, yeah, maybe we'll get insights from that. But weather's a big one.
I think when you're talking about health and players staying on the field, mm-hmm. that can lead to revenue impacts too, right? Because if you lose a starting pitcher, it's going to affect your season win total probably, right? And so I'm also thinking that the health industry and AI within the health industry is probably growing exponentially as well. How can you mix those two maybe going forward? So in 5 years, can we maybe get to a point where you can get some data points that could prevent certain injuries, whether it's arm angles for pitchers and different things?
We're doing that for sure. And so injury, I believe a ton in injury prevention. And so identifying like these are the things that happens. But there are some predictors, even like guys that spin the ball more are, there's a couple things. Either they're doctoring their hands with some sticky stuff, or they're gripping the ball so hard that they're able to get that rotation. We have a pitcher in the minor leagues now who just last year finished his third Tommy John, and he spins the ball more than anyone, and he keeps tearing up his arm. So I think we're getting close to that, and I think it will get better. It just makes sense it'll get better. There's probably going to be some devices that you're able to put on your arm, and we're able to see like how did you injure your arm in this outing? Because every time you throw, you're probably doing some damage, and so we may get there. We're just not there yet, but I think it's coming. And you're right. On the revenue side, the Dodgers probably make a lot less money if Ohtani's hurt, right?
I'm going to sneak in 2 questions if that's okay.
I'm for it.
My first question is there kind of like an entrenched behavior in baseball that you have data that, hey, if you guys would do it this way, things would be better? I'm kind of thinking of an example as like, hey, if tall guys in the NBA would like underhand their free throws, they'd...
But it doesn't look cool.
It does, well, and so that's kind of where I'm going. Is there something like that for baseball?
Bunting.
Bunting, okay.
Yeah, so we have the league leader in bunt base hits. He's so good at it. He had another one last night, TJ Friedel. He lays it down. It's a surprise. And then when you're in a situation where you need to bunt with anyone else but him, it's terrible. And it's Shaq shooting free throws. Like, it's just some players are really bad at bunting, and it's such a tool if you can use it effectively, especially with the speed we have in a lot of our players. Nothing enrages me more than a bunt double play, but it happens a lot when you don't know how to bunt. And so, yeah, like that's a big one, I think, off the top of my head.
Okay, awesome, thank you. And my second question is there been like a bug that has made it out of like your analytics that's like, I don't know, just an interesting story or something's like, hey, that was not expected and it's a software bug or something that's kind of made its way through?
I hope not. I don't know.
Okay,
None that
fair
I can
enough. That's
identify.
hey, awesome work then.
Like in our go, no-go trade analyzer, it says trade Ellie De La Cruz. Like, not. I don't think so. I hope not. Yeah.
So when you're going through and using these data points for injury prevention and performance for some of these athletes, obviously it's helping with their performance and the way they react on the field. But do you ever get any backlash from some of these athletes?
That's a question I get asked a lot too. Luckily, no. So when we started introducing a lot of this, we had a pretty good baseball player. His name was Joey Votto, right? And the Reds have been around for a long time. He may be the best pure hitter that we've ever had. And he bought into all this. He even had his, like for our advanced scouting, when we're looking at how we're going to face another team, he had his Joey Votto fastball report. Like he had his own things that he wanted to see. And so as a young player coming up, you want to play until you're 40. There's a guy showing you how to do it, and he's bought into all this. You're going to do that. So he mentored the Ellie De La Cruzes and all the people that are coming up. So not as much. I think the people that get the most pushback probably are like the people that are analyzing sleep and then the nutritionist. But I think that's true of anyone in life. I thought it was so cool, and I use it in a group I was talking to earlier. I got to tour your Beacom athletic facilities, and I was in the weight room, and as I was walking out, there's this almost like food pyramid of like training information, and at the top was like the smallest piece was like internet fads, and then it went through, there was massage, there was hot, cold, but the bottom one was sleep, and the next one was nutrition, and I'm like, that's the most true things ever, and I think that's what you get the most pushback on. People would rather buy the thing that shakes your arm and tells you you're going to pitch harder than getting a good night's sleep and eating a couple vegetables. So yeah, luckily I haven't had pushback, but I've heard of it. We do have a player app where this is the number one way we feed them all their information, and we have the ability to see who's using it and who's not. It's not surprising who uses it the most, and it's not surprising who uses it the least, if that makes sense.
I have 2 questions. And one of them piggybacks kind of off of Isaac, not just pushback from the health side, but I think even in general, change is hard for a lot of people, and a lot of these coaches have been around for decades, right? Mm-hmm. So what kind of pushback do you get when they're like, we've been around this game, we don't need to trust the AI, we know, how do you guys handle that?
They don't trust the AI, and baseball in general doesn't trust the black box, right? Everything needs to be explainable, and how did you get here? And you lose some of that in AI, and it's, whether it's perfect or not, like we lose some value probably because of that trust factor. We have a Hall of Fame coach right now, but he's of the older group, and when he came in and we have all the stuff we give them in game, he's like, make it simpler. Like he joked about it in the press conference, but he said, make this simpler and make the font bigger so I can read it. Like those were the things he asked for, and so he lost some information, Is it detrimental to the club? Probably not, because he has some really talented coordinators that are also, getting that information. But yeah, we do get pushback. How do I say that? Like there's so many websites out there that measure the performance of a team, and they have their stats like we were talking about earlier, and then we have our internal metrics, and sometimes those don't align. And so when a coach is like, why does this say this and ours say this, like we get a lot of pushback there. And most of our things normalize over the season, and so like we do hit you. It happens what we think is going to happen for the most part. But when you're in a single game scenario and it doesn't fall to what you predicted or something like that, there's a ton of questions around that. So yeah, we get a lot of feedback from coaching for sure.
And the other one's kind of a weird question. Are you ready?
I like weird questions.
So I thought about this one because when you showed the fan cam, I was at a game that did that one time, and that was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
But then it made me think of that documentary called The Long Shot, where the Curb Your Enthusiasm, the camera happened to go by and find the guy, and he was innocent on charges.
Oh,
Do you guys ever have, it's so good. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's very good. Do you have any, with the volume of data you have and videos and photos, do you ever work with outside entities, like for criminal investigating or anything? Does that ever come into play with your team?
Sure. Not so much on the sports side because we're focused on the field, but we have cameras all through the ballparks, all our facilities. We do that. We have some cool stuff too. Like this is pretty new to this is definitely not something that falls under me, but we have these drone tracker systems, and so there's a certain fence around where you're allowed to fly a drone around our ballpark. And if you're across the river, in our case, and you're in a parking lot, you pull up, you get the drone out of your trunk, and it takes off, this drone tracker instantly catches it. And then we have strategic cameras where then we focus on who launched that, and it'll go to the launch point. And so before that drone even gets anywhere near our ballpark, we know where it's going, we can track it. If it needs to come down, there's ways to do that, but we've tracked where it came from and who's done that, and police are notified. And that's a system that runs pretty unattended. It's an automated system, which is so cool. So yes, there are crimes that happen around the ballpark where we're asked for video. That happens a lot. And if you do anything dumb in the ballpark, they capture that they're really good at that. So we had one guy walk into a closing elevator. We had one guy, they had those like Segway scooters, and it's not a game day, no one's there. He's in some remote part of the park. He fell off, and they, like within, I think 2 hours, it was emailed around the organization, like, look what Chris did. It was awesome.
Maybe we'll take one more question.
So I'm curious with the amount of data that you're collecting, the element of governance and ownership. So do players have any ownership in the data that's collected on
Nothing.
them?
I own it all. No, there's no, and we're not worried about PII or any of that stuff. We do have some HIPAA regulations around some of the medical data, so we track medical data for potential players we're getting. Our doctors do analysis, and we have to filter like who has access to that. That's at the data level. But no, they don't. There's no like, I want you to delete my data. I bet most of them don't even know the amount of data that we have on them. I know what every player's age, their sleeping habits and their variable heart rate throughout the night. I know that stuff. I can tell who's drinking, who's not drinking. They don't know that. But we have the data's massive. Landed, with our biomechanic databases are over 1 trillion rows now. It's just massive, the amount of data we have. My cloud bills are huge.
All right, I think we could probably continue to ask him questions, but we have had him for a whole hour. I could listen to him again. It's fascinating to watch the videos and to listen to your stories, and I'm grateful for every one of you who came, who asked questions, and who supported him. Thank you so much to Mickey, and please thank him with me.
Thanks.
Do we still have some food? please feel free to grab some Cracker Jacks as you leave, or ice cream or hot dogs or whatever it is that we have.